Republican Senator in Texas John Cornyn finds himself facing a crowd of Democrats that would love to run against him in his Senate re-election bid next year. And one of those candidates joins us now. Cristina Tzintzún Ramirez, welcome to the Damage Report.
Thanks for having me.
Very glad to have you on. Not a big fan of John Cornyn, so excited to see him facing so much opposition. But sort of as I alluded to in the intro, this is a pretty packed field. You have a lot of candidates in the Democratic primary. You have some independents as well, other Republicans running. So entering into that sort of race is different than some other primary races where it's one or two candidates duking it out. What's it been like so far in trying to differentiate yourself, trying to get media coverage, all that when there are so many in the field?
Well, I think what's important to know about Texas is that our state is rapidly changing. And so there's a real opportunity to unseat John Cornyn. He actually has lower favorability ratings in Texas than Ted Cruz, which is pretty hard for a lot of people to believe that someone can be more disliked than Ted Cruz, but he is in our state. So it's a crowded field of 10 people running. I don't believe competitive primaries are anything to be afraid of. I think that's part of democracy and a good thing. Of the major candidates, there's 10 people running, but really only 3, maybe 4 that are real candidates that have staff, have raised money, have progressive organizations behind them. And I am the only candidate of the major candidates that's an actual progressive. So I'm the only candidate that supports Medicare for all. I'm the only candidate that supports the Green New Deal. And I also importantly reflect the diversity of our state. So our state is majority people of color. In Texas, 1 in 3 of us are immigrants or children of immigrants. My mom is the oldest of 9 kids from Mexico, and I'm the only candidate that's fully bilingual. And then also importantly, I'm the only candidate that's been an organizer. So I spent a decade and a half in our state leading some of our largest voting and civil rights organizations, bringing people together to raise wages for workers, makes jobs safer in Texas, and take on issues like student debt and climate change. So I'm running as an unapologetic progressive, proud to be a progressive and proud to represent the diversity of Texas and the future of who I think Texas is. And I think John Cornyn and the Republican Party represent the past in our state.
So here at the Damage Report, especially for as important a race as this is, I mean, taking over the Senate is not just important for Texas, but also for a future Democratic president. We want to make sure that people have information about all the candidates, so we've been trying to bring on multiple. But I want to give you more time to talk about your platform because it's Texas. Still, people consider it a red state. It has, I mean, that last race between Cruz and O'Rourke was very close. And so you say Medicare for all, Green New Deal. Are you worried that in any parts of the state, running as an unabashed progressive could potentially hurt you?
Well, I've done political work in Texas for over 15 years. I know that there is no lefty choir to preach to, that there are only a bunch of non-believers to convert. And so the way I talk about my progressive politics, whether I'm talking about Medicare for all or the Green New Deal, is about how it makes the most basic common sense for Texans. So when I talk about Medicare for all, I talk about the fact that in Texas, we have the highest uninsured rate in the country. 1 in 6 Texans don't have health insurance, and that the best quality system would be Medicare for all, that by allowing private health insurance companies to profit off of our pain, suffering, and illness, we've not only created the most expensive healthcare system in the world, we've created one with some of the worst outcomes of any industrialized nation, and that by any measure, that's a failed system. And even on the Green New Deal, people think about Texas being synonymous with oil and gas, but Texas is changing. And so we are actually now the largest wind producer in the country. We have 250,000 people that work in the oil and gas industry and 233,000 that work in advanced energy, being green energy. And that will soon outpace the oil and gas sector. So to me, why the Green New Deal is so important to Texas is because 1, we have suffered firsthand the real catastrophic consequences of not taking action on climate change, what you've seen the last few hurricanes here in Texas. And also because the new Green Deal says we're not going to leave any workers behind as we transition our economy. Well, I think that's really important for Texas because we have 250,000 workers that work in that industry.
So as of right now, the Democratic Party, I mean, I know they're not supposed to get too involved during the primary. That has not stopped them before. Have they been weighing in on the field at all?
Yeah, so I was asked to run not by anyone in Washington. No one asked me at the Democratic Senate Committee. I was asked to run by our state's largest progressive leaders and also people that help run Beto O'Rourke's Senate campaign asked me to run. And there are people in this race. One of my opponents, MJ Hager, who was recruited and asked to run by the Democratic Senate Committee. They have not endorsed in this race, but I am proud that I'm being run as a real Texas candidate by the real Texas organizations and institutions that have been on the ground doing progressive work in our state for over a decade and a half.
For more political news, breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.